Welcome to Readings at Seksan, the September issue. My name is Elaine Chu, and I am a writer as well, a fiction writer, as well as a visual arts researcher. I'm delighted to be your host today, presenting our exciting lineup of prize-winning authors who will be reading from their works. At the kind invitation of Sharon Bakar, who asked me to curate the series for September. Curating is really a very big word. All I really did was think up a theme and then invite a number of authors who have written around this theme to read for us. And I'm so glad that all of them accepted. And these are fantastic authors, so I think that you're in for a treat. So the theme I chose for September readings is history, mythology, and folklore. I know, a huge area and covers a lot of ground, but it is something that I've been working out in my own head recently in my own fiction. What does history have to teach us about how to live today? What are the lessons from history? And also, what role does mythology and folklore still play in our current lives with all the techno gadgets that we have and everything? So I'm really thrilled that we get to hear excerpts from the works of these fantastic writers who have dealt exactly with these questions. And we get to also hear them read in their own voices, their own works. So from warring gay lion statues to an encounter with a fictional tiger in the forest of Sabah, from meeting an interpreter of winds to a prophet from yesteryear who saves the state of Pahang. And then finally, to cap us all off on a major high note, we get to hear from a menstruating copywriter trying to write a jingle about maxi pads. So without further ado, let me introduce our first reader for today, Ng Yisheng, who in some ways requires little introduction in this region. Ng Yisheng, who is a Singaporean poet, writer, playwright, performer, and activist, and really impressively a two-time winner of the Singapore Literature Prize. His fabulous short story collection, Lion City, just won the prize this year, and it's a wonderful, eclectic, and really humorous, which, you know, I think is great for a short story collection. And it's also a blend of Singapore mythology, history, and folklore in contemporary settings, as in a fantastical and science fiction-y kind of way as well. So it's a wonderful blend. However, I believe that Yisheng will not be reading from the collection today. I encourage you to go get his collection from a bookstore, but he's going to read you something different, and you'll get a taste really for what the collection is even through this work, because it has his definitive voice, and it's special and definitely I think something that you've not heard before. So take it away, Yisheng.
Hi everyone, I'm Yisheng from Singapore. I could have chosen tonight to read, like my gay love poems published in a book of hymns, or maybe something from Sanctuary, the queer anthology I edited, or something from my book of science fiction and fantasy short stories, Lion City. But instead, I decided to go a bit more performative and read from my spoken word collection, Loud Poems for a Very Obliging Audience. Now, a few years ago, we were having a poetry reading inspired by the 7 deadly sins, and I was asked which deadly sin would I like to choose, and as a proud gay man, I chose pride. So here is pride. In tonight's top news, the Merlion's coming out. Live from his riverside podium, he stands on his tail and proclaims, "It's true, I am a Leo Pesco homosexual. It's been so hard serving as your national symbol, handling all those thumbs-up tourists who want me to spit in their mouths. But enough with the lies. I got through a lightning strike to the head. Now I will survive. Let the whole world know I am not just an icon. I am a gay In related news, the Merlion on Sentosa has also come out. He's like, dude, what's wrong with you? Your jar must be like broken. I host circuit parties on my island. I shoot rainbow laser beams from my eyes. I literally have a sign next to me reading, I'm by look out. Oh, and this is Justin. The stone lions at Takashimaya have also come out. We just celebrated our 23rd anniversary together. Hashtag love wins. Yes, one of us has a ball and one of us has a baby, but you cannot anyhow apply gender stereotypes. In fact, Tower A is more butch than Tower B. I thought I was the butch one. No, I am. Trending on social media. Singer, the courtesy lion, has also come out. My best friend is a pink elephant and I wear no pants. Why do you think I'm always smiling? Leo and Bernie have come out. Can what? The Youth Olympics was 6 years ago. Now we're adults. The lions at Sri Mariamman, Tien Hock King, and the Bank of China are also out. The lion on the coat of arms has come out, and the tiger identifies as bicurious. Let's get the reaction from the man in the street. Yeah, all these sick, perverted lions. We have been giving them too much freedom. First, we let them in the zoo. Then we gave them a musical at Marina Bay Sands. Think of the children. We must hurry up, change our name. No more Singa Lion City. We need new animal. Something innocent like a penguin. No. Or teddy bear. Yeah, bear. Bear's very macho. Majula, Barong Bura. Further developments on our top story. Oh, the Merlion is organizing a rally. Too long have we suffered under the oppression of the cis-hetero Homo sapiens patriarchy. We must be united. Abandon your pedestals. Fall from your frames. Come down from the flags of NUS, NTU, and NJC. Resign from the Great Eastern Life logo. Go AWOL from SFTMI. Dance like you're in a Chinese New Year parade with two men inside you at once. We are not afraid. We are not ashamed. We are what we are. God and the Singapore Tourism Board made us this way. Joining us here in the studio is the prominent anti-lion Facebook activist, Mr. Hantam bin Atam. We are a conservative Asian society. These lions cannot understand because they are from Africa. So we must tame them. Shave off their mane, cut off their claws, make their mouths become smaller and smaller until become Hello Kitty. Harmless already. Lions can change. Mr. Hantam speaks from personal experience, having spent his youth as a lion himself. In fact, are his fangs getting longer? Oh my god, he's about to pounce! Everyone out of the studio! Now reporting live from the street. The rally has become an international lion love fest. Sphinxes stalking at traffic junctions, manticores mating at taxi stands, lions from Aesop and the Panchatantra in a three-way with the winged lion of San Marco. Orgies erupt with lions from the New York Public Library, the Forbidden City, and the Pillar of Ashoka. Narasimha loves Kimba. Sekhmet loves Sarabi. The Nemean lion hands out condoms and lube. The Cowardly Lion proposes to the constellation of Leo, and he says yes. An impromptu review of West End love songs ensues, performed by the Bronze Lions of Trafalgar Square, while Alex from Madagascar, Braveheart from the Care Bear Cousins, and the Sea Games Lion do drag as slutty bridesmaids. Suddenly, the heavens burst open. A face appears between the clouds. It's Aslan. No, it's Mufasa. No, it's the beast with a black mane and a red body. The same one Sanila Utama beheld 700 years back when he founded this country. And he says to us all, this land is yours, O you heralds of fortune, you guardians of gods. Build a new city. There is no better place than this. Thank you.
Welcome back. You have to admit, that was the funniest laugh out loud bunch of gay lions that we've heard in a while, and read beautifully by Yisheng with gusto. Okay, so next up we have Sharmini Aphrodite, who's a Malaysian young writer, She's from Borneo. And the story that she's going to read for us is Ouroboros, Ouroboros, which is her shortlisted story in the Commonwealth Short Story Prize this year. So it's great. It's an honor to be able to hear her read it for us. And I actually know Sharmini. So I met her two different ways. We worked together at the Institute of Contemporary Arts, and also at the same time, actually, that year we did a Smoke Long on the Road, a reading here in Singapore together. Smoke Long is a fantastic flash fiction journal. I encourage you guys to check it out. And the reading actually that was filmed in Singapore at Books actually is available on YouTube if you want to check it out. So here's Sharmini reading from Ouroboros, Ouroboros for us, where she writes about an encounter with a tiger. Is it the mythological Harimau Jadian? So let's see. So, please welcome, join me in welcoming Sharmini Aphrodite.
I'm Sharmini, and today I will be reading from my story, Ouroboros, Ouroboros. Ouroboros, Ouroboros. When she saw the tiger, the wall had been wet with color, trembling on the edge of evening, with everything either as thick as blood or as delicate as water. Walking along the pathway, she'd felt protected, shrouded in a skin stitched with light. The jungle that she was walking past was turning black, but for the fierce last lashes of gold on the undergrowth. This was what she mistook, at first, for the tiger's fiery pelt, but then she sensed movement. Out of the corner of her eye she saw it, then felt something brush its finger down her spine, from the knob of her neck to the small of her back. When she turned around, she saw eyes glittering in the undergrowth. She saw the undulation of limbs, heard the breath of the beast, and although every cell in her body was screaming for her to run, she turned around completely so that she was facing the tiger, its eyes on hers as she walked backwards. She remembered an old story she had heard as a child, of villagers in India who had worn masks with human faces painted on them, strapped to the back of their heads to deter the tigers that had once been plentiful on the edge of the earth. The movement of her feet, the wind on her shoulders, none of it registered. She was nothing but a ball of heat in her throat, and it seemed like a lifetime until she had canvassed the path and saw nothing through the leaves of the jungle. The tiger was out of sight. She was safe. I saw a tiger in the jungle today, she said to her grandmother during dinner. They were eating in the outdoor kitchen, which faced a jungle of its own. Everywhere it coiled around them. The night sounds had risen. Chittering insects and belly-croaking frogs and whatever else lay in the deep. Moths were throwing themselves at a flickering strip of neon tacked to the tin roof. The shadows flecked the food on the table, the rice and the vegetables and the fish and the spiced milk. Saya nampak harimau dalam hutan, she winced as she said it. She always forgot when to use the informal I, and worried as she was speaking that she might have jumbled the sentence structure. The language was not even their own mother tongue. Her grandmother snapped her eyes towards her. Apa? She asked. What? Aku nampak harimau dalam hutan. Harimau? Impossible, her grandmother said, in the same Malay. There have been no tigers here for a very long time. Perhaps you made a mistake. A mistake. Her grandmother raised her right hand, knotted like bark and veined with crisscrossing blue and green, like an aerial view of rivers, and held it over the food. Her fingers undulated with the grace of a woman much younger. Mempermainkan, she said, using her left hand to point at the light. A trick being played on you. But she had not mistaken the sight of the tiger. That night, she saw its eyes in her dreams and she was burned by them. It was hard enough for her to fall asleep as it was, with the next house a long walk away and only the jungle for company. They were alone in the liquid dark, which was so absolute that she could only make out the jungle because it was a little denser than the sky around it. When she woke, her neck was burning. It was already dawn. She crossed to the mirror with her hand on her throat and saw her raptured reflection, a slash across her body from a crack in the mirror, a skein of trap light tearing her torso and her hips in half. There seemed to be nothing wrong with her neck. It was not inflamed or anything. Looking into the mirror, she felt a sensation that she had not experienced for many years, but which had been common to her in her childhood. The sense that she was not really looking at herself, that there was no self and no body, that she was someone else's dream. The heat in her throat was fading. Going downstairs, the house was empty, but she could hear singing coming in from outside. Her grandmother was singing a song in the language, but she could not understand it. She felt as if she must have heard the tune before. When she walked out into the kitchen, her grandmother was sitting cross-legged on the floor, singing in these stringing long beans. "Good morning, Adu," she said. A handful of English words her grandmother knew. Morning, good, sun, beetle, night, dark, snow. This she had only seen in the National Geographic, along with the photos of her well-to-do aunt, who had run from the village one day and never looked back. "Good morning, Sayang," she replied. She wanted to ask if she needed help, but she could not remember the word for help, so instead she gestured towards the heap of long beans and mimicked the motions that her grandmother was making. Her grandmother shook her head and jutted her chin at the jungle, which, in the soft tunnel illumination, was shaking off its mystery, becoming green and hard and knowable. Birdsong wobbled out of it. She wanted her to help collect the rubber sap. She thought of the tiger slinking through the undergrowth. She formed her mouth around the word, but her grandmother shook her head sharply, once, twice, said something that she could not catch. That a harimau, that she recognized. No tiger. Her grandmother reached out and curled her fingers around her wrist. She looked into the older woman's eyes. Dream, she said. That was another word she knew. After she had washed her face, she picked up the bucket and walked into the jungle. There was a worn path that she could take, which would lead her to the rubber tree. Free of dusk and night, she began to believe that she had only imagined a tiger. It was so quiet that she could hear everything. In the city where she lived usually, there was never a quiet this complete. Even in the deepest night, there were the distant sounds of other lives. There was a word for what public officials did to crows in the city, but she couldn't remember it right then. It was as if language was being sloughed off her. A particular word for shooting the crows because they were a nuisance with their noise. She was preoccupied with this line of thought until the air around her changed, like something coming to rest on her shoulders, and she knew that there was something in the jungle with her. She moved her eyes, and there it was, straight in front of her, crouched in the undergrowth, its eyes on hers, ready to spring. Walk back, she thought, like yesterday. Instead, she put her hand in her pocket and drew out her phone, opened the camera app. The tiger was perfectly still. Barely breathing, she zoomed in and pressed the shutter button, then lowered her camera, trembling, preparing to run. But when she looked up, the tiger was no longer there. Okay, I think I'll stop here for today, so thank you for listening and hope that you enjoyed the reading.
Thank you, Sharmini. That was a lovely reading. So our third author who will be reading for us today is Fairoz Ahmad from Singapore. Fairoz will be reading from his short story collection's eponymous story, The Interpreter Wins, which was published by Ethos Books in 2019. The book is a collection of his experiences and observations growing up Muslim in a world that is kind of crazy, right? And the way that the Muslims are viewed today as well in terms of just the discourse and all of that. So I loved this short story collection because it not only brought in the Muslim fabled element as well as Muslim history, but it's also that gently satirical tone that Fairoz has that just brought me many chuckles. it's a delightful read, and you can also read up more about my interview with Firoz about this book up on Asian Books blog. And wind, therefore, in this collection is not just in the title, it also winds through the stories as a motif and interacts with all the different histories of the Muslim world. Please join me in welcoming Firoz Ahmad.
Interpreter of Winds. That afternoon, under the light, a spider that had just hatched scurried up the table. It stood on tiptoe and waited. Moments later, it stretched its abdomen, producing fine threads of silk. The spider allowed the column of rising air to warm its threads, caressing and delicately undressing them. I watched all of this silently, but did nothing. The spiderling then flew from the table, its threads propelled by the soft updraft. The wind brought it places, sometimes to the top of the world. In 1924, a British expedition team discovered a spider on the crown of the Himalayas. That was what he liked to tell me. The histories of our world, he once told me, are shaped by winds. The history of Egypt was altered by it. Let me tell you the history. It begins with a king who lived in a palace of glass. It was a story told many, many days ago before he entered his deep sleep, hence carrying with him the fragmented histories of the world into his dreams. Sometimes I wish he would tell me less of his histories, but more of the role that faith plays in them. Since then, I had roamed the edges of the marketplace every morning, finding items to bring back to moisten his lips, so that even in dreams he would remain nourished to complete his histories. But ever since he had remained still while time moved on, my memories of him had begun to diminish. As his beard began to overrun the uneven landscape of his face, I started to forget how he looked like, save for those pink lips which I moistened every morning, and whose slight quiver at the wetness of my touch told me he still lived. There is a history, they say, which is recited only upon the impending loss of a loved ones. They say it is a story of love decorated with the trappings of a scholar obsessed with his scholarship. Some say it's a story of scholarship, an obsession with scholarship decorated with the trappings of a love story. Listen. The history of Amir Hamzah. This is a story they used to tell in the Malay lands when there were still kingdoms and when there were still kings. There once lived a scribe in the kingdom of Darul Ta'zim, now known as Johor, who was considered to be the greatest penman the Malay world had ever seen. His name was Amir Hamzah, and he was the royal scribe for the king of the Abode of Dignity. It was not long after his appointment as royal scribe that the kingdom declined and became a British colony. It declined not because of trade, for its trade with both the old and new worlds was flourishing. It declined not for want of military might, for no war broke out and no blood was shed. It declined because it had allowed itself to be mapped by the British. One day, the new lord of the kingdom summoned Amir Hamzah and said, Her Majesty has sent an expedition team to the Malay world to collect curiosities from the colonized land. In the ship from which the expedition sailed in, I have seen the orangutan from Borneo, a man running amok from Pahang, and a Singapore stone. I, however, would like to give Her Majesty something less vulgar, something that would suit her more refined taste. And what do you envision this gift to be, Lord Campbell? Amir Hamzah asked. In the Abode of Dignity, there exists the greatest Malay manuscript ever written. It is said to be 400 years old. Each page is gold-plated, and each character etched on that page is made from ink ground from the bones of the nightingale. I, however, have made a promise to your former king that I will protect this manuscript. As such, I would like you to replicate the Hikayat Muhammad Hanafiah. This copy will be first presented to Her Majesty the Queen and then displayed at the British Museum. Thus, Amir Hamzah took on the arduous task of replicating the Hikayat. Many weeks later, his good friend Abu Bakr saw Amir Hamzah sitting listlessly by his desk. Oh, Amir Hamzah, why do you look sullen? Why are you not completing the task given to you by Lord Campbell? His friend asked. My dear friend, I have fallen in love. I have fallen in love with the princess. While she is no longer the royalty she once was, she still demands all royal things from me. She demands that my expression of love be known and yet not known outside this kingdom, and that once known, it will have to live forever. My beloved friend, she has set upon you a most perplexing and impossible of tasks. It is wiser that you focus instead on the task at hand, upon which you will be rewarded handsomely. Once you are rich, you will no longer have to trouble yourself with such things. Amir Hamza took one long look at the manuscript and said, "You are right, friend. From today I will work day and night to finish this script. It will consume me, just as how the poetry of Majnun consumed Leela." Upon its presentation in London, the Queen rejoiced at the beauty of the manuscript, although no one in the court understood its language. After the Queen lost interest, it was given away to the British Museum. Visitors gaped at how the gold-edged pages glittered under the ray of the morning sun, the use of the traditional Nashki script to depict specific Arabic verses with the distinctive roundels that marked the end of each verse protruding into the margins, and how the ink echoed the texture of the paper. But the public too soon lost interest. Many years passed. One day, a returning British official from the Malay land who had immersed himself in the most archaic languages of the Malay world noticed something peculiar in the text during a visit to the museum. The introduction to the text bears the following words. I, Amir Hamza, have been tasked by Lord Campbell on 17 March 1824 to replicate the manuscript known as the Hikayat Muhammad Hanafiah. I have understood that this exercise is merely to satisfy the curiosity and whims of the Queen of the land of the English, whom I have not and will never meet. It has also occurred to me that if this manuscript is to be displayed in the museum as a curiosity, then it does not matter what is written in it. I have therefore decided to pen an ode to my love, for she posed to me the most challenging of tasks. To make my love to her both known and yet not known beyond the shores of the Malay world. And that once known, my love will have to live forever. One day, dear readers, and many years from now, you will learn our language and acquire the ability to interpret our text, just as how you have learned to map us. One day, when that happens, you will read my ode and pry the secrets of my heart. And the secrets, once out, shall live forever, protected and encased in the everlasting memoriam of knowledge you call the museum.
Thank you, Firoz. It's great to be able to hear you read again. That's lovely. So up next, our fourth author is young and debonair Joshua Kam, who is the youngest winner of the Epigram Prize for his debut novel, How the Man in Green Saved Pahang and Possibly the World. Joshua is Malaysian and currently in graduate school in Michigan, I believe. In this debut novel of his about a ribald road trip taken by two intrepid young protagonists, Gabriel, who is a chorister in church, as well as Lydia, and this road trip all converges in Pahang, and along the way they're guided by a prophet from a long time ago from the Hikayat Hang Tuah, and also a sea goddess, and in the process they grapple with all kinds of different historical time periods and stories, folklores of Malaysia, from Taoist tales of Sampokong to the Hikayat Hang Tuah, as I mentioned, to the communist insurgency in Malaysia. And there's also a throw-in of a lot of sort of Malaysian identifiers that are like inside jokes almost, like shop signs for urut istimewa, to Cantonese slang, to eating barbecued stingray in roadside stalls. It's definitively Malaysian. So here is Joshua Kam.
Oh, hello. Thank you for letting me read. The green man glanced at Gabriel, and their eyes held fast like brambles. He was younger than Gabriel had assumed, about his own age, though the crisp, close beard concealed it somewhat. Gabriel couldn't tell where he was from. He could have passed himself off as anyone in KL, one of 10,000 visitors from Pakistan or Bangladesh, an Iraqi tourist, reassuringly Muslim. No, that wasn't certain. There was something very Levantine about his Arabic, but he spoke it like a second language, and Gabriel found himself trying hard to catch the cadence, to find more clues, to train his ears. The man's eyes glinted. Gabriel felt dimly that he'd walked into a trap. Turning from the guard, the stranger addressed Gabriel again in Arabic. But I must go in. Yunus has the fish. I must pluck it from his lips. I must go in. Gabriel cocked his head. Wasn't it the other way round in the story? He wants to go in, he said in Malay. Is there a Yunus in there meeting him? He can't. It's just closed. The guard lowered his voice and pointed surreptitiously with his thumb to the cluster of police cars and officers banked on the alley across. I don't know how you know about a Yunus or a body or nothing, but even an imam came this morning and the whole ceremony has been on ice. The minister's here. No one comes down for deaths like this, not usually. But if anyone else goes in, it's the end for me. He clucked his tongue and drew his thumb against his throat. I'm going to pause right here. Gabriel nodded, then shrugged. Was shrugging a universal gesture? Would the man in green understand? Gabriel could see them behind the grill clearly now, a line of navy uniforms on the red brick pavement with their hands at their waists, shielding the doors of the mosque from view. And behind them were suited figures hunched in the noonday heat. He turned back and translated all this to the green man. The green man shook his head. It won't do. It won't do. I must go in. I'm in the wrong time already. The fish has all but swallowed the bait, and it's time to... His eyes glazed over in their frenzy while he pleaded with the guard. Then he grew very still. In what Gabriel took for nervousness, the fellow began fidgeting with his hands, rubbing his fingers like rubbing off sand. Now the guard was asking questions again, wanting to know exactly what the green man wanted, and Gabriel was attempting to speak over both. He was still trying to decide if he wanted to translate this fresh nonsense about fish and time, when a deafening rush of wings whooshed out from past the station and over the Klang River. Pigeons. A whole cloud of them bore into view, wing to wing, so densely in formation that Gabriel couldn't make out the street behind them. From behind the Robinsons' building, some thousands had materialized and swept over the mosque. Women ducked, men scattered, children pointed and squinted. The pigeons flew low, and the sound of flapping filled the gap under the LRT pillars like the sound of a monsoon. The guard looked up. The white people in their mosque-mandated sarongs looked up. The line of officers wobbled as they braced for the typhoon of wings sweeping over station and mosque. What happened next, Gabriel would try very hard to recall in order, but never manage. Everyone looked up. Pigeons didn't flock in KL. Not in hundreds, not in tens of thousands, not in a square kilometer all at once. Not blooming out of nowhere from behind the damn Robinsons' building. He glanced back down at those around him. Everyone was looking up except the green man. He just stared at Gabriel and winked. The bloody basket just winked. Now that was a universal sign. Gabriel could hardly fathom what was happening before he found himself gently but firmly pushed aside as the green man turned to the padlocked door. His hand steadied and hovered over the lock. The distracted guard barely heard the click of metal as the bolt sprang from its ward and the lock clattered to the ground. Gabriel had no time to register this as the green man glanced his way one more time and then leaned in to breathe on his ear. "God's not dead, just wrong, right?" he whispered in the crispest English, then turned to the mosque again. The gate rolled like a stone and the bastard was through. The hell had he known to say that? By now the pigeons had descended almost directly upon the mosque, domes and all. Even the policemen were beginning to panic, and one of them pulled out a pistol and fired into the air. But with their faces all upturned, no one saw the green man glide round the pavement over the grass and dart into the mosque. Presently the guard finally gathered what had happened and glanced at the cloud of pigeons that were now alighting in the forecourt. And just beyond that... the man's jade-green robes were whirling and whirling. The pursuit began. Before he knew it, Gabriel too found himself running, though exactly whose side he was on he couldn't tell. Who would say something as specific and absurd as that before using passerine magic in a mosque? The god expected the pigeons to scatter as he ran. They did not. Each time he and Gabriel threatened to step on a cluster of feathers and claws, they would ripple away left and right, fluttering in a flurry of blinding wings that blocked all line of sight and foiled all chase. But the green man whirled as in a dance and glided through the gaps among the flapping wings, handily ducking past the policeman's line. "Hoy!" the guard bellowed, at last, trying to catch their attention, but this too was almost drowned out by the cacophony of cooing pigeons. By the time they found the line of policemen, the horde had just begun to disperse. But every human was doused in feathers. Feathers and the unmistakable waft of pigeon shit. And beyond that, the ministers. Gabriel could pick out their faces from the headlines of the last 5 years. Even the Foreign Affairs Minister could at last be seen, shielded against the onslaught by their bodyguards' jackets. But even then, they were all too late. Past the ring of tourists, past the guards and officers, past the minister splattered with pigeon piss and pigeon shit, past the perimeter of yellow tape on the garden's edge, past the tessellated tile and the Moorish arches and the Mughal domes designed by some white boy in 1908, the green man stood still. Right at the tip of the grounds, where the tiles and grass gave way to the cement embankments at the river's fork, a body lay at his feet. Soaked to the bone, the corpse's drenched clothes sagged over the bloated belly, the pruned skin, the pallor of the face. A new stench hit Gabriel's nostrils, cutting like a barang through the stink of bird. Death smelled. Gabriel cast himself. Everyone had paused to see the green man kneeling with his hand over his body, over the body's heart and lips. He said nothing, just a tap of his knuckles on the chest, like knocking on a toilet door to see who was inside. And no one, not even the pursuant police, could mistake the moment when the body's eyes fluttered open. The body's face began to shrink, with the river gunk streaming out of the waterlogged pores until the face looked almost normal, if a bit pale. The eyes, once swollen shut, began blinking. The belly too subsided, as did the bloating in the arms and the feet and the neck. Then suddenly the body belched out an unmistakable living groan. The birds were alighting, but the people in the mosque grounds, with every eye on the resurrected man, paused as the green man backed away and the corpse struggled to stand up. By now he was quite recognizable, an independent blogger who had made the news of late. He'd been a surly one, about as quick to smash the government as the opposition. Recently missing. On the eve of his wedding, missing, a certain Yunus Musa. Yunus Musa the corpse turned about. He opened his mouth as though he had something to say, recently restored to himself and all, marveled at each unstiffening limb, and each digit of each finger, and with his mouth agape and a ring of pigeons taking light about him. The showmanship of all this was incontrovertible. But when he looked up, he saw the light of policemen and the cabinet members and blanched, returning back to his pallor post-rigor mortis from a minute before. What happened next, Gabriel found hardest of all to describe. The flock of pigeons had gathered over their eyes once again, and before anyone knew it, the resurrectee was obscured in the many-eyed cloud of wings. The green man turned to his audience, grinning with a savage sapience. The curtain of birds fell in rows. No photo recorded the moment. Some said Yunus, like his namesake, jumped right back into the water from whence he had been exhumed. Another witness suggested that a panicked gunshot, muffled by the pigeons' cacophony, caught the green man by the ear. More than a few claimed to see the revived blogger borne aloft like a cherub in the cloud of pigeons, each one lifting him by his drenched clothes up into the air and out of sight. At any rate, once the birds had fled, the sun was back on people's necks, the forecourt was plastered in shit, and the green man and his patient were gone.
Thank you, Joshua. I guess I won't see a descending flock of pigeons in quite the same way again. You never know when it's going to be apocalyptic. Okay, last but not least, we have our final author reading for us today, Intan Paramaditha, who is an Indonesian writer. And actually, Intan is a major force in Indonesian contemporary literature, and I'm so honored to have her read for us today. She currently teaches media and film studies at Macquarie University in Australia. And one fact that I thought was really interesting that you may not know is that she is versatile in writing in both English and Bahasa. So in her academic writing, she writes in English, but in her fiction, she has chosen to write in Bahasa. Intan's debut novel, it's a choose your adventure novel, The Wandering, came out this year to wide acclaim in translation worldwide and has been reviewed most notably and very favorably in many places, including The Guardian. Today, Intan will read for us from her magnificent short story collection, which I really enjoyed very much, Apple and Knife. Again, I did an interview with Intan for the short story collection, and it's up on Asian Books blog if you want to check it out to find out more about her short story collection. And it blends a lot of fairy tale elements, fairy tales that we know so well, Cinderella, Snow White, but does it in a Gothic-like setting and spins them into an Indonesian context, which I think is just so unique and enjoyable and just goosebumps when I read it. It basically remakes all these tales in strange and fantastic ways. So here is Intan Paramaditha reading for us from Apple and Knife. Enjoy.
Hi. Today I'm going to read an excerpt from my short story. It's called Blood. This was taken from my short story collection, Apple and Knife, translated from the Indonesian language by Stephen J. Epstein, and it was published in 2018. This is the UK version published by Harvill Secker, and here is the Australian edition published by Brow Books. Blood. On goes the light. The new LCD has just stopped projecting. We're sitting around a table complete with laptops, Blackberries, cell phones, and half-finished coffee. These are the ads we made last year for free maxi pads, explains my boss, a woman in her 30s. We'll continue the series with the same theme, menstruation as revenant monster. A very uncomfortable condition, she says, then emphasizes, without free maxi pads. She asks everyone to put forward an ad concept, sort of a writing contest but with no prize money. The winner has the honor of developing the idea with a team, of leading a small group. There may even be potential for promotion. Why don't we start by brainstorming? Let's get some thoughts on what a woman feels when she's having her period. Cramps, a copywriter responds. Pimples. Good, but try to connect your ideas with our client's product. Moist. Soaked. Smelly. Dirty. Nah. Your turn, Mara. I think hard. No, not now. Those were the words in my head when my first period came, during Ramadan. My mother had died giving birth to my sister the year before. Neither survived. Every woman will go through it, so you have to know how to use a sanitary napkin. It's not hard. Mum demonstrated in front of me, so I stood with knitted eyebrows as if observing an alien's mucus. For me, it wasn't just the pad that looked strange, but my mother's body, so unlike mine, full of grooves, streaks of white, veins of purple, hair like weeds. How many years before my body would fill with marks too? Don't look at me like that. It's no harder or stranger than tying shoelaces. I felt a budding pride. I'd been initiated into knowledge of what happens to a woman's body and how to handle it. I knew of important mysteries long before my friends. but adulthood turned out to be closer than I imagined. It came when I was still too embarrassed to buy sanitary napkins at school when I was in 5th grade. Other girls didn't get their first period until 6th grade or even the second year of middle school. Why did my childhood have to end so soon? After debating with the voices in my head, I settled on a small towel that I brought for gym class. A clever enough solution for the moment. May you feel proud in your grave, Mom. Well, Mara, your fast can never be 100% perfect again, so said the Ustaza, my Quranic recitation teacher. We sat on my living room floor, the both of us pressing our thighs tightly together. She didn't like me to sit cross-legged. Why can't it be perfect? I looked down. My words were more an expression of regret than a question. I'd never managed to fast until 6 in the evening for 30 days straight. But now my fasting would be riddled with holes like a grater, like an overused rag. I hated incompleteness. After Mom died, teacher came to our house often, so often that I thought Dad would replace the photo of Mom that hung on the family room wall with teacher's picture. But 2 years later, Dad married again, and I realized that teacher would not be replacing my mother. I never got close to my stepmother, but at least she didn't make up stories about how my mother went to heaven, in contrast to the wicked who are tormented in hell. I didn't believe teacher because once, before my mother died, she told me that heaven and hell were as dark as shadows. Sometimes heaven and hell perch on your head like a butterfly, she said. Sometimes they disappear. Even though you are unaware that death is upon you, they appear to us in turn, as close as your breath. When I told Dad about my period, he just commented awkwardly, "Oh, I see." Teacher's lecture came the next day. Dad and I were like a human and a wandering spirit. He needed a medium to reach me, someone to act as a sidekick. First Mom, then teacher. He must have told her. Traitor. "From this moment your sins are tallied, Mara," said teacher. "Your mistakes are no longer your parents' responsibility, but your own. So bow your head at the sight of men, have a sense of modesty, don't speak loudly. You know, a woman should never become a singer." Wow. Mom liked to sing while she bathed. She fantasized about wearing a tight kabaya and performing with a gamelan orchestra, her hair tied in a knot. A woman's voice can tempt. It can invite fornication. What's fornication? What's between your thighs is a treasure, so don't sit with your legs open. Why? Many desire it. It's a source of disaster. Why? Teacher never explained. I decided I wasn't allowed to know because each prohibition invited danger. If I understood, I would be craving the forbidden. Menstruation led me to know of a treasure chest sealed tight. It needed to be buried away, hidden beneath the sea, because it was bloody. "From now on, you must rinse your pads and underwear," said teacher. "Wash them so that they're spick and span and wrap them in newspaper." Why? 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 My teacher was getting exasperated at how I responded to each of her admonitions. So she told me a strange story from her village about something that happened near the pesantren. One day, a girl was changing her napkin in a public restroom. She was in such a hurry that she forgot to rinse the pad and tossed it straight into the trash. When the girl got outside, it dawned on her that she left her ring behind. She ran back and opened the door to the toilet. Imagine her shock when she came upon a long-haired woman squatting her back to her. When the woman turned, the girl saw her pale face and red lips and screamed. Even more horrifying, the woman was licking her blood-soaked pad. Blood and ghosts. I nodded. It made sense. They always showed up together in stories. I stopped with my whys. Thank you.
Welcome back. So wasn't that just superb and electrifying, the reading from Intan? Thank you so much, Intan. It's just such a pleasure to hear you read. Okay, so that's it from me for the September readings for Seksan. I want to thank Sharon Bakar for inviting me to host and to put all this together. To Paramaditha for the editing of all the videos, all the work that goes into putting the whole video together and loading it. And to all of you for coming and listening, and especially to all our writers, our authors who read to us today so beautifully. A small appeal from me. Please do go and support your writer and buy their books if you've enjoyed what you've heard today, or if any part of it strikes your fancy. Do check out their books. They're delightful, wonderful reads. And in terms of just, I guess, our theme, just to leave you with one little thought. Carlo Rovelli actually says that time is sort of like a loop. It comes back around. So in that sense, it's sort of strange to think of all of us in some ways becoming history, or the mythology and folklore for the generations to come. What will they say about us? What sort of mythologies or folklores or stories do we actually leave them with? What will they think? Will they see us as monsters, or will they see us as gods and goddesses? Okay, so that's it from me. I want to say take care, be well, be safe, be healthy, take care of each other. See you again soon. Bye.